Hey everyone, my name's Austin. I'm a staff product designer here at GitLab. Today I wanted to share a topic that's been fun for me over the last year as AI has gotten more prevalent. It's unlocked the ability for me to do what I'm just going to call vibe coding with the GitLab development kit. So first things first, let's just talk about some terminology. I've gotten these questions pretty commonly in coffee chats. I'm not here to say I'm like the authoritative source. This is just for our discussion here today. So when I say vibe coding, I mean, I'm talking about just describing what you want to do to an AI tool and getting it to write some executable code for you. To do that, you're doing some form of prompt engineering, which means like you're writing a message into that input box and trying to get to come out with something on the other side. Something that is often sought after is to one-shot an attempt. That means like you give it one prompt and it gives you exactly what you want on the other side. You may have noticed people comparing like, oh, I asked ChatGPT, I asked Claude, I asked Gemini the same question, and I got different results. That's because there's a degree of randomness to all of these models. There's differences in the way that they are built underneath the hood, so the way that they play will not always be the same. So if you want to read more about those, I've linked to some IBM blogs that I thought were pretty insightful. In terms of the tools that I'm using in my stack, I just use like vanilla VS Code with our agentic duo chat. I have Claude. Sometimes I use the web version or the desktop version, doesn't really matter. Terminal and Figma. And then on the technical side of things, I have knowledge around installing GDK, setting that up locally, a very basic understanding of Git so I can pull and push branches down and up. I have a basic understanding of the front end framework called Tailwinds. We use a GitLab flavored version of that. That's very helpful for front end changes. And a bonus would be if you can learn how to run tests, then you're that much closer to having a production ready merge request because you'll be able to write coverage for things that you do. So why does this matter? It's fascinating to watch others have access to making changes to their company's code base because now they're like, oh my gosh, my designers can now ship code to production. It's so cool. Like I'm now having designers write like one PR or pull request like every iteration. I'm like, yeah, we've already had that at GitLab for a really long time. When I first started, I had GitLab installed as a GDK on my first week. That is incredibly powerful. I don't know if that is like underestimated here, but like that is so cool that we have the ability to do that. And now with the t complementary tools that we have between Claude and GitLab Duo, it's getting that much easier to just work with what we already have to start to actually feel these things out. So I shared a couple examples here of like a smaller MR, but you could also work towards something bigger. Ultimately, like the idea that we initially brought to Bill for the Duo Agent platform, which evolved into Project Studio, started out just as like vibe coded MR stuff. Like we are just trying to get a feel for how things could evolve in the product. So when do I choose to vibe code? I mean, the very basic answer is like if I think it's going to take me longer to do it in Figma, I just will reach out for GDK instead. Has a little bit of like a recursive feedback loop here. Like the better I get, the faster I am in writing the code as opposed to doing it in Figma. But what's nice about this is you avoid some of the traditional complexity that we carry with just mocking things up in Figma. Like you have to annotate a lot of micro interactions. You end up writing really long, lengthy issues with acceptance criteria. You lose some of the nuance, like translating that over, ultimately more feedback loops. When you can vibe code an idea, you get to actually feel how that works locally, and that communicates a lot more. And it also helps you uncover a lot of edge cases, which is very helpful when you're trying to think through like a holistic solution that you would eventually run into anyways once the merge requests are open. I shared a handful of examples here of just different MRs that I've merged, but also ones that I've closed too. Like just because like I vibe coded something doesn't mean it's going to merge. One that I thought was really fun was I opened a change to put the quick actions like in a merge request into the command palette. And that's like in Figma pretty easy to just like mock up what I would do there. But the nuance is like, how does it feel to actually launch that command palette and find the rebase action? What happens when you hit enter and the MR page needs to refresh? And I discovered like some things would asynchronously load properly, other things wouldn't. There's just a lot of nuance that comes with a lot of the ideas that we're working on, and getting that much closer in a merge request really unlocks some meaningful discussions with engineering. So these are just like a few tips I have off the top of my head. Honestly, some of them are evolving, especially as Duo continues to get better around vibe coding. But try and keep your prompts pretty small. Think like, okay, I just want to add a button now. Okay, I like that button. Let's make that button do an action. Just take like one step at a time because if you try and one shot it all at the beginning, you're probably not going to get pretty good results. If you want, you can share your screenshots with Claude. That makes it a lot easier if you get stuck, if you're like, oh, GDK broke, I don't know what's going on. Screenshot it, send it to Claude. It's usually pretty good at helping you fix it. I will sometimes give it mockups. That's why I was saying I had Figma, my tool stack, export some screenshots, give that to Claude, tell it where GDK is locally, and we kind of get going where we need to go. Duo's really good at knowing our code base, so it can help you find where specific pages are, specific buttons, and that saves you a lot of time just trying to search for the cruft of everything. But it's also just a really good tool in general, like Duo and Claude for just asking questions and trying to learn things. Because some of the code just like I don't understand what it means, but just even asking it questions has taught me a lot over time. And one more part too with this, just be curious, like watch other people building stuff on YouTube. I watched someone create like Lovable or just using Cursor, and like it's just fascinating to see how other people approach it. It's taught me a number of things along the way too. But things are evolving quickly, so watch out for pro tips, but that pro tip may become old school pretty soon. But there are some tricks like telling AI to think harder or be careful, and for some reason those things just kind of work. Um, when I'm trying to vibe code specifically with GDK, I tell Duo to avoid writing specs because it'll just spend like a lot of time trying to create the perfect one-shot change, and we don't really worry about specs until we know the front end is working how we like it. And I will often get stuck, so I have to end up starting a new chat. And by stuck, I mean it gets slow, it's not like responding, or it hits like an error, and just starting a new chat usually helps break through that. But yeah, if you run into limits, we do have limitations on Claude and Duo too for like the length of messages that they can reach. You'll notice when it starts getting super laggy, and also you have like a time boxed amount of time that Claude can run throughout the day. I think it's like 5 consecutive working hours or something like that. So. If you got an idea, honestly, I'd love to pair with you on it. I think it'd be a really fun activity to just do like a little live session. So if you got an idea, let me know. We can try and pair together over Zoom and see if we can get something ready to ship. With that, I'll put it up to questions.
Does anyone have any questions? I have the first one. I suppose I'll start it off then. Have you played with the Figma's AI prototyping stuff at all? And if so, how does that compare with this?
Great question. We didn't get access to Figma Make until like rather recently, so I haven't had a lot of time to step into it with Project Studio consuming all of my focus. I've been far more in just using GDK to execute ideas, but I've been really excited by what I've seen from a handful of people that have been using Figma to help bring some more ideas to the table. I think I've seen Vithika do a couple really cool, interesting ideas around CI/CD.
Yeah, I like the goal that you mentioned of being able to interact with a new idea as opposed to a static thing. I think they both help with that. The difference is if you're working directly with the code, you're obviously getting the real skin, the real design language happening. Whereas Figma, I'm not clear if it's really able to use our pajamas or not. So that could be a good differentiator to think about. Very cool.
Yeah, totally.
Let's.
Melissa.
Hello. Thanks for that. It's really cool to see that you're constantly learning and prototyping. I was wondering how often do you decide to vibe code something versus prototype in Figma? Is it something that you do for fun or to explore the interactions for projects that you're working on?
Um, at least with GDK specifically, I tend to stick to ideas that I have a pretty good understanding of where I want to go with it, or I'm comfortable enough with letting Duo explore some of the options with me. So I share an idea of like adding widget to the home page. So I had like an idea and I was like, I think Duo could probably get it close enough that I'd be pretty happy with it and I could just like tweak it from there. But if I want to be more exploratory, I would probably just use Figma because I don't want to mess around with like having to get the code base to work nicely. If so I'm working on like a bigger idea or bigger concept, I probably would start with like that idea of having an open canvas that I can completely work with. But I might only mock up like 3 or 4 states and then try to move that over to GDK. So instead of like creating 100 screens, I'm being a bit verbose here, but yeah, I would do a lot less because I would just need only enough to know where I want to go.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Um, mm,
And in terms of like, do I do this on my personal time? I take care of kids in my personal time. I don't have a lot of personal time. So I do try to carve out time at work for this specifically to learn more.
Very cool. That kind of leads into my next question. Has it ever taken you more time to vibe code something than you thought? Because you can run into bugs and dependencies and a ton of issues with code development.
Yep, totally. There was one idea that I thought was just like super straightforward and like it ended up being way more complex. I even had all the pipelines passing, and when I handed off to an engineer to review, one of our retrospective items was like, oh, this was just way harder to do. And the reverse thinking was we should have closed Austin's MR and just had the engineer open a fresh one because they could have done it in a much leaner way. But that's just kind of, I think, the learnings that we're going to be going through as more people start contributing code, and it's not just engineers 100% of the time having the initial thought.
Cool. Thank you for sharing.
So I think I heard you say that you wanted to get some office hours going so people could join you in vibe code. I'm putting
Yeah,
words into your
I would
mouth,
love
but
it.
I mean, you said
No,
something like that.
that was the open invitation. I now that Project Studio's like um, demand on me is like decreasing a little bit. I would love to spend like a Friday, like maybe 4 hours or so, open time. Feel free to throw it on my schedule. Say, like, hey, I got this idea on Figma. Want to see if you can help me bring it into GDK just so we could try it out. I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah, at the very least, record those sessions if anyone takes you up on it, just so people can start to wrap their heads around how to even do it
Oh yeah,
themselves.
yeah.
I think that's great. Open invitation, y'all. I suggest you take it. Could be some cool stuff happening.
Hey, Austin,
Anyone?
I had a quick question for you. I know I've done this myself in the past. I think we've had a couple conversations about this, so it's really cool. I tried to like fix some accessibility issues, mainly with some of the like vibe coding stuff. Um, but I was curious, like when I ran into a couple issues, where kind of same thing that you said, where the merge request got all the way to the engineers, and before merging it in, started having conversations with the engineers, and it was like, hey, the code that it produced was way more like complex or whatnot. For whatever reason, we couldn't like merge it in. I'm curious if you have like any, because I noticed on one of the slides you mentioned making it more like GitLab code, you know what I mean? Do you have any suggestions for making sure like if it's, like, meeting the standards for GitLab, like code standards, meeting like SDLC standards, like certain things like that? Have you come across that in the past?
Yeah. So one thing I'll do before I push my change up is I'm like, okay, I'll start a new chassis. I want you to review this whole change as if you were doing a code review, and I want you to take a GitLab approach to it so it knows like the repository and it can see how things are done in other places. Until that, I
Mhm.
want it to be like as lean as possible, and I want to be able to one shot my code review with a real person, and then I have it do it again, and I like push on it a little more. I just try to see how far I can push it to like get down because it tends to be way more verbose, and you kind of start to learn what it does a little too much of. So a good example would be it tends to write like very verbose specs, and we don't tend to have like this complete coverage of specs. We try to focus on like what is most important in testing. So just you start to learn little quirks along the way to like whittle things down. I also have found that Duo's really good at taking in feedback from a code review. So sometimes I'll get a front engineer to review something and they'll be like, hey, you should do this. And I'm like, I have no idea how to do that. And I just take that comment and I drop it into Duo and it goes, oh, I know what to do. And it comes up with a fix. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. That could work. And then generally is pretty good. So I say that with the caveat, like it kind of keeps changing. Like in July, I couldn't have done that as smoothly as I do it now. So like as Duo's gotten better and more reliable, like it's able to take on more of that responsibility.
Okay. That's a good idea. I've never thought about having it review it as if it was an engineer reviewing the code, or like the pull request or the merge request. And so I'll have to try that next time because before I even get, because normally that's what I'll do is I'll tag an engineer and be like, hey, can you do a review on this? And then before I even get to that point, maybe I'll start doing that and maybe it'll point out some things I need to change. So cool. Well, thanks.
Yeah, totally. And anytime you push up a branch too to like the GitLab repo, it's going to automatically assign GitLab Duo as a reviewer. But it is nice when you can get that just locally because it'll catch little stuff like, oh yeah, I have duplicative logic here. Like that'll totally get caught. I'm like, great, yeah, go
Yeah.
fix that.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Thanks.
Awesome presentation. Thanks for bringing this up, Austin.